joining in just a moment. So we will get some introductions done here first and foremost. If you haven't yet done so, we're going to have time for collaboration, but if you would just mute yourself for the introduction component, and then when we get to the interactive conversation, we want you to feel comfortable unmuting yourself at that time. So if you would just mute yourself for now, you can utilize the chat box at any time to ask questions. However, just stay muted for just a minute, and I'll let you know when we're going to open it up and have it be interactive, because we do want to hear your voices today. Thank you for introducing yourselves in the chat box. If you haven't done so, please do so. There's also a Padlet link, and you're going to see the Padlet up here. I'm going to walk you through that. This is where we store all of our information. We want to thank you for joining us today. I know in some parts of the state and beyond, it's a rainy, gross day. So thanks for joining and spending this time with us. We are going to have this be our final Project Success virtual office hours for right now, and we will pick up in the summer months. June 16th, we're going to have a 3-part series on inclusive practices with the specific angle of supporting our students with significant intellectual disabilities. So we appreciate your time joining us up to all 6 of our webinars up until now, and we look forward to seeing you again in June. We're going to share out that inclusive practice information at the end of today's webinar. So we hope that you'll join us then. If you're not familiar with Project Success, we are a at no cost resource center. We're part of the Indiana Resource Network, which works in partnership with the Indiana Department of Education. Our mission and vision is to support leaders, educators, paraprofessionals who are supporting students with significant intellectual disabilities. And you can always find our website at projectsuccessindiana.com. And just as a reminder, if you're part of the Indiana School District's public schools, we are a free resource for you. So please check out our professional development, our virtual check-ins, webinars. All of those are at no cost to you or to your district. So if there's a need for professional development for your teachers or for your staff members, we encourage you to reach out to us. We are at no cost to you. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Meredith Keating-Burke. You've probably seen some of my coworkers introducing themselves today in the chat box. You're going to hear from several of us today. So I'm joined today by the Project Success team. So we have Amy Howie, we have Ashley Click, we have Heidi Brett Baker, and we have Mary Baker Budisa. Everyone's introduced themselves in the chat box, but our contact information is on the website. So I mentioned it earlier, Project Success Indiana. I encourage you to visit that. Contact us if you have questions. If you have district-based needs, we are here for you. We're also going to have a special guest today. Lisa Paddock is going to join us. And if you don't know Lisa, she is from the Resource Center InSource, is our parent resource center, supports parents across the state of Indiana. She's joined us a few weeks ago to share out information on supporting parents, and we want to hear from her again today. Really discussing what does family engagement look like as we enter the summer months, and most importantly, as we start to prepare for fall 2020. I know that may not be what you want to think about here today, but we want to equip you with all the information, the resources, and the tools to have ready for when you are ready to have that thought and that conversation with your coworkers. So we're excited to have Lisa. We had great feedback a few weeks ago with the content that she was providing, and we want to continue to support both you as educators and your parents as we think about what this time of distance learning, what this time of diverse start of school might look like. So thank you to Lisa, and we'll pass the mic to her in a little while. So the purpose of today in all of our virtual office hours has really been to build a team of teachers in a space that we feel comfortable collaborating, sharing ideas, sharing what's happening in your own districts, sharing tools and resources and strategies that have been successful to you during this time. So we want to continue that today. We want to specifically focus on summer activities, not necessarily discussing ESY. We know that that's a district level decision. We know that's a state to district level decision. We want to be mindful of how do we engage and stay in touch with our students? How do we continue to support our learners? How do we take care of ourselves as educators? And then how do we use the time to start to prepare for fall? So I just encourage you, as we look at this Padlet, we have those resources that are there for you. As we begin, just a few housekeeping things. We want to hear your voice today. We want to hear your ideas, and you can share that in a couple of ways. Number one, you can add something into the chat box. We'll be monitoring that. We will put guiding questions up there, and you can respond that way if you feel more comfortable, and I will relay it out to the group. Or we want to hear your voice. So we would like you to unmute yourself when we do some of our discussions. We're sharing ideas, and we want to hear your voice and share out what's happening locally within your school, within your district, within your community. The only ask, as always, is if someone else is talking, just wait until they're able to finish their idea and then go ahead and share yours. We don't want to speak over each other as we're sharing out this information. So without further ado, I do want to just walk you through the Padlet. Many of you may have used this tool before. It's a great resource, both for internal collaboration with your colleagues and your coworkers, or also with collaborating with some of your students. I know, and parents as well. I know some of our districts have used this. What you're going to see here today is around supporting summer activities in fall. You're going to see our agenda. We're going to look through a discussion on what local summer activities you're going to be doing within your districts. We're going to talk about supporting families during summer and fall months. And we're going to think through considerations for fall. And we have developed several guidance documents and templates to help walk you through what data collection could look like, what resources you may need to get started in the fall, as well as just thinking about what school may look like within the new structure of how we need to socially distance and support our learners through that. So we're going to talk through some resources. Our team is going to walk you through those. We're going to share some summer choice boards today. Sorry about that. Choice boards all over the place. So we're going to walk you through just how to utilize one of those. We created several examples for you, and we want you to have access to those as an example of what you might be able to create with your students. So as the Padlet works, if you click the scroll down, you can scroll over or you can scroll down, and all you need to do is select the document. So there'll be a brief description there around the document, and you can open it in two ways. You can just open it in a new window, or it may ask you to download it. So, or you can look at it through the window here. All of this provides the information, and it's stored here indefinitely for you. So I encourage you, as we look through, we're going to walk through this today, but you're going to have access. I'm going to scroll to the end. You're going to have access to each week's Padlet. So information on resources, information on supporting families, information on how different teachers have set it up. We had several of our educators model how they set up their distance learning plans, all the way to transition and employability skills. So I encourage you not only to explore this Padlet, but to go on ahead and visit the former Padlets that are both here within this Padlet and on our website, projectsuccessindiana.com. So how we're going to start out today is we're going to start with just some conversation. I think this is the best way to start to learn about each other's districts, gain ideas, and get thinking about what and how we can support our learners moving forward. We've gone through a time of transition where school, for many of us, ended abruptly and changed the entire focus within likely 24 to 48 hours. So how do we take what we've learned and move it into summer? And then most importantly, how do we take those lessons learned and move it into fall? For many of us, not maybe knowing what that might look like. So what we're going to do, we always put the question into the chat box. So if you need to see it that way, feel free to answer it there. But I'm also going to open up the line. You're welcome to unmute yourself and answer any of the questions aloud as well. So we're going to go on ahead with the first question. And so that is, when is your last learning day for your students within the calendar year for this school year? So last learning day. So we have June 3rd, May 22nd, May 5th, so several from mid-June. We have June 23rd, May 29th for Nicolette, and I saw a May 22nd as well. So many coming up, it's on May 15th. So some coming up within the next couple of weeks and others about 1 month from now. All right, so let's think about, has your district discussed what those changes in the structure might be for fall? So have you heard of what those conversations might be for fall 2020? So things like calendar adjustments, schedule adjustments, needing to implement social distancing or utilizing e-learning. Several of you have not heard it. I think some districts are probably waiting for the message from the governor within the next, I think, 24 hours maybe. All right. Yep. District waiting to hear guidance. Yep, absolutely. Waiting to hear that guidance from the governor and the state, which I believe is the focus of tomorrow's briefing. All right. Thinking through student data. So thinking about what student data have you gathered between school closures and the end of school year? So for many of you, that may be March 13th or March 16th. What kind of data have you gathered? A couple of still rolling in with the other questions, so I'll just still discussing.
And maybe you can tell us how you've gathered that data.
All right, so the question is, what student data have you gathered between school closures and the end of the school year? And then just like Heidi had mentioned, really how you have gathered that data. And feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Kara from New Palestine. Hi, I've been meeting with my students via Google Meets. I have 3 Google Meets a day, and then I work on IEP data collection. So I have mainly focused on that currently.
How has that gone? I know you shared a couple weeks ago utilizing your paras. How has that process gone, Kara?
It's gone really well. My paras have to be a part of the Google Meet. We're not allowed to meet with students one-on-one. So they join in and they talk with the students as well, but they're mostly muted and sit there while I work with the child. But it's gone well. Some of my data, I would say, the students haven't always had great days when they've worked with me, but I think that was,
sure.
We knew that would be the case. But more importantly, though, I think it's that face-to-face interaction, them seeing me, their reactions. I have one student who just smiles. She won't look at her mom when her mom asks her the question because she doesn't want to take her eyes off of the assistant and I. She's just so happy to see our faces. So to me, that's more important than the data I'm getting, but I am taking it.
Absolutely. I think that's great that you're able to leverage your paraprofessionals as just another source to help collect that data. And of course, smiling students is always #1. All right, so I'm going to go back to the chat box unless anyone else, feel free to interrupt me. So Ina was speaking about IEP data and over lesson goals through interactive slides, videos, and Flipgrid. Absolutely. And then participation with a digital system, logging on, task completion through Canvas, utilizing Flipgrid, and discussions with parents, and photo admission. All right. And then last but not least, teachers and paras are gathering info via several platforms, team meetings, Zoom, via phone conferences. Data has been sporadic. Talk to me, would anyone feel comfortable talking about how it's been utilizing the phone audio for data collection, good, bad, or indifferent, since that is a new process for many of us? utilizing the phone. All right, I saw that in a couple. So if you think about it, add it into the chat box. But let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So we've talked about student data. Let's move on to, most importantly, creative ways you can you have stayed in touch with students, and several of you have mentioned those, but most importantly, during the summer months. So what are some creative ways we can stay in touch and connected with students this summer? Or maybe some ideas that you've used from just between March and now. And feel free to speak up.
This is Anna Finley from Greenfield.
Hey, Anna, go ahead.
Well, I have been using Marco Polo with my students just to interact with them kind of in a fun way. But I also was just in contact with the Best Buddies, our Best Buddies rep. And so we've opened up a Google Classroom, and we're going to do like some events with our peers and the kids on there, like a scavenger hunt, a dance party. So we're planning on doing that, but also Best Buddies, they said it's open to anyone. They have a May calendar out right now, which I posted, and they have like something every single day, which is amazing.
Sure.
But so we'll be I've gotten that information out to my families, but that's kind of how I've been, I guess, socially interacting and helping my kids connect.
Absolutely. Do you know if they're continuing that program beyond May or June?
I would assume, I think Best Buddies is pretty involved. I know there's going to be a virtual walk in June. I think they just posted the May calendar, so they're probably just waiting to see what's going to happen in June and July. So.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. So we have several students with summer birthdays, so I'll make cards and send those. I think we'll also text parents with short videos saying hello and what I'm doing at home. Hopefully we'll get a response. Absolutely, just that way to stay connected socially, as Anna kind of mentioned earlier, that importance as well. And continue to share those ideas. We're going to go ahead and jump to the next question. Beyond this kind of goes with the answer that we got. So what supports do you envision parents may need to keep students healthy, active, engaged academically and or physically with those physical supports over the summer months? And feel free to jump right in to the chat box or unmute yourself.
Hello?
Go for it.
Hi, this is Regina Murphy. I actually had a question about this. A lot of my students are multiply handicapped, so they have a variety of physical disabilities as well as some cognitive ones. And I'm wondering on how a lot of the equipment that they use for physical therapy, bikes and standers and different kind of physical therapy equipment is at school. So I'm kind of worried about them if this goes on through the summer, because we usually have a summer program, how to help them with that kind of situation, because they don't really have access to the equipment anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things, and we've talked about this a lot, but the power of collaboration right now, we're seeing such creative ways that educators are connecting. So I would encourage, if you haven't yet, and you probably have, to connect with your OT and your PT at this time and get some creative ideas between the group of you. Obviously, you need kind of that collective idea if there are things that could be done, modified, adjusted within that home setting. And I think many of many of the teachers on this call are all kind of in that same boat where, you know, much of that equipment does stay housed maybe in the school building, or maybe it didn't get transported back and forth. So I encourage you to kind of find that time to collaborate. I know it's been a couple of months so far, and many of us aren't sure what happens beyond July. So continue to stay in touch, utilize your leaders, your administrators to help guide those conversations as well. Their connection, both as an administrator, but their connection across all types of you know, educators in your building, PT, OT, LP, to kind of facilitate those conversations. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And if anyone else has...
I see that somebody just posted about a YouTube channel. Would you mind posting the link to that, or could you tell us where to find that? If that's shareable, that would be great.
Yeah, so let's, I'm going to jump over there because I'm a little bit behind in the chat box. So kind of highlight those, and if Heidi or Ashley, if I see any that
I'm not seeing anything posted about it.
Okay.
I didn't see somebody post a link.
Sure, we'll get that.
Thank you.
So things to think about. Knowledge of what is available over the summer. Some day camps are closed, but extracurricular activities have been canceled. I know it kind of differs between community to community, so checking in locally, I think that's important. Just knowing that there are some local therapy centers that are closed, but can provide some private loans for equipment. So kind of going back to your question there, Regina, talk of extended school year for summer may continue to be online services. So just kind of thinking through what that could be beyond dismissal from school. And then the YouTube channel with exercises for kids and adaptations for home. Yeah, if you could find that YouTube link, you can add it here, or feel free on the Padlet, you can add it using the plus sign, and you can add a resource there. So you'll see some ideas here. Another thing is, in just a moment, we're going to go and show you some summer choice boards. Much of them include activities and ideas that can be modified for both movement, home-based ideas, as well as literacy and numeracy. So thank you for adding that. So it's the Pike Adapted PE. So there's a link right there. All right, so let's just add in the last two questions here. We'll continue having that conversation, and then we're going to move and show you some resources and open the floor for Lisa to kind of share some of her insight there. So let's make, we talked a little bit about data collection, but let's go ahead and think about that last question. So what data collection methods will you use in the fall? And I know this is, we need to think about it more in a couple of different ways, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. What does this look like if we are continuing distance learning? What does this look like if schools are open? So if you're going to just reflect on that, and then we're going to open the floor to Lisa. And you may want to think about some of the collection methods you've used in the past as school started, and we can always think about how we start to modify from there. So feel free to share those as well.
And you might think about some guiding questions about, like, what are you going to need to collect data on right away as the fall starts, knowing that you might have some new students or some students returning. What will guide your decision on what you're going to collect?
Well, I think for me, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a matter of seeing where they are. And I don't expect them to be coming back on the same level at which they left. So I feel like I'm almost going to be starting off at complete reassessment.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to think about. And as we're thinking about data collection, we created a tool, and we're going to walk you through that here in just a minute. But it starts with, where were your students prior to school closures? Where and what, if you were able to get any data and between March, May, June-ish, and then more specifically, where do we pick up in the fall to really be thinking about what data points we need. So we're going to walk you through that as well. I'm going to get to the chat box because there's a few ideas here. So Nicolette was talking about student portfolios. Currently, parents are sending me work samples by email and make task analysis sheets so parents can check off the task as they complete the task. Excellent. It's a great way to make sure that students can stay focused, but also you're able to check that information off and gather the data you need. And then Anna said, thinking of new students is a bit overwhelming. Absolutely. Knowing when, where the students were when you kind of started that extended e-learning, to kind of have that good data prior to, and that's something we need to make sure we're thinking about consistently as we're jumping into the fall months. Be collecting that data consistently, have it on a way that it can be shareable between those who need that data, but making sure that there's a consistent collection of that data in case we need to shift the structure of how school is provided to students. With that, I'm going to kind of pause. I want to walk us through. Thank you for reflecting on that. That not only helps the conversations, it helps us know what we need to share resource-wise. So I'm going to check to see if Lisa's on here. And
I am here.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey.
Lisa, I want to introduce Lisa to everyone and give her the floor for a little bit, just to kind of talk about supporting families during the summer months, supporting students. Lisa, as I mentioned earlier, is the in-source IDOE liaison. So her information is in the Padlet. You'll see it right here. If you have any questions after this, specifically towards that, I also added the in-source website and podcast that I thought could be useful for you as an educator. So Lisa, if you wouldn't mind just taking a few moments to kind of talk about how we can support families. We shared the questions with Lisa ahead of time, just to get her perspective as well to walk through that. And then I believe Lisa's also going to talk a little bit about the social and emotional competencies from the Department of Ed, which is important as we're thinking about how do we prepare activities for summer? How do we prepare our lesson plans aligned to content connectors and fuse those important components into our lesson plans alongside those academic standards? So Lisa, I will give you the floor and thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you. I so love to come to talk to all of you, and I'm popping in and popping out because I have another meeting, but I am happy to do anything that I possibly can as far as that. So on the Padlet, I did send some information. I sent our website, and our website, we have a coronavirus resource page, and on there we did try to get a variety of different things. I looked through these resources to try to find some basic resources that didn't contain a lot of pop-ups and things like that. And before I go to that, the first things that I do want to talk about has to do with exactly what was stated. This is a difficult time for everybody. And one of the very most important things for this summer is to keep the kids and the parents engaged. And they just like you as teachers, you feel like there's a gap. All of a sudden this happened. There was no end of school, getting ready, end of the school parties, all those things for our kids and our teachers to transition. So thank you so much for what you have all been doing during this time of being creative, thinking outside the box, Google Classrooms, Google Meets, Zoom, all the things that you've been doing. So thank you so much. One of the things that I'd like to say does have to do with the fact that, as the very first person stated, my apologies, I didn't catch exactly who, the students seeing your faces. I can tell you the parents that we are talking to, just knowing that there is somebody they can reach out to during their office hours. So teachers have whatever office hours, and to get ideas for things to do, how to modify or accommodate this work. And just to have a connection between the teacher and their child is vital. I am hearing that so many different ways. Just exactly, it was stated, you know, yes, families want their kids to learn, don't get me wrong, but just the joy that that student has of seeing their teacher or their peers. So that would be probably one of the biggest things that I hear, finding ways to be able to reach out to families weekly, bi-weekly, at whatever point you can, to make a gathering. I heard from somebody else tomorrow. They were like, well, we can meet anytime except for this time, and we're having a virtual online dance party. And it is just as awesome as you think it is. That was the statement. So I loved it. I loved it. And I was like, this is the kind of thing. So I know that you all have your own stuff going on. You know, when I do a training, I talk about the stuff everybody brings to the table. But sometimes it can be just fun stuff. It can be just, I need to see your face. I miss your face. And that connection that at least many times can slowly wind down at the end of the school year, and we talk about, hasn't happened. So on our website, we do have a variety of different resources. We have technical resources, but we also have family resources. So, you know, we have some supports there about a variety of different things, from stories being read to stories read using ASL to, you know, Zoo, you know, videos, links, you know, a variety of different things. And I know that the students that you work with that have significant intellectual disabilities, we have to be mindful along the way of how to make that work for them. But many times, as we know, we start with what everybody's doing, and then we say, how do we make it fit for this child? So I hope that you can find some resources there. There are, as you mentioned, I was writing down, I now have new ideas to go back and make suggestions about Google Meets and Classroom and some of these other type of things. So that is exciting. I hope you can find something there. Additionally, I sent over information on the social emotional learning that Christy Berger has put up on the Department of Education. And as we know right now, especially with the concern, the fear, the staying at home, one thing that particularly occurs right now are for families with students with very significant health needs. Many times they are particularly compromised, immune compromised, a lot of different times. So it's really hard to typically go out, but now it's just almost impossible. So we do want to think very heavily on, how do we keep emotional supports? How do we help the mental health of the family? Many times mom, dad, partners, whoever may have lost their job, maybe both have, maybe it's a single parent. Many times there are other kids in the home. So in this vein, anything that I think that we can all do to work together for social emotional health is vital. Any of the things that can be created. I was in a case conference, and that teacher of record were making choice boards. So maybe it's a social emotional choice board about things to talk about, or smile and frown, and, you know, do these two pictures, which makes you happiest? I don't know. I am not a teacher, but I hope that we can, at this time, first and foremost, think about the health and well-being of everybody, the kids, the parents, the teachers, because we know that everybody is struggling. And I am happy to help anyone in any way that I can, as all our staff are. But I can tell you that I have seen just some great innovations come about. And I hope when we're talking about moving toward the fall, I hope this will break open the doors for a lot of schools to be able to look to say, okay, how can we use technology to meet the needs of students if this is a hybrid program? Or perhaps our students that are very medically fragile won't perhaps be coming back at the exact same time. We don't know what it might look like, but I hope that, you know, this has been, you know, eye-opening to, you know what, we could tape this and put this out as a class. We could do this activity and broadcast it. It's like anything else. We could make use of some technology to keep our kids involved with each other and with their teachers. So I hope that those are some ideas. And if there is anything that I can do, I am more than happy to do it.
Thank you, Lisa. I put in the chat box, just so everyone knows, I added 2 links. One is the Instructional Resource tab, and the other is the social and emotional learning competencies. There's a lot of information there to Lisa's point of kind of looking for that balance of adding in some of that conversation when appropriate, embedded within your lesson plan. So that link is there as well. And Lisa, I just thank you for your time. And Lisa added her email address right there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I've got to run, guys. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Lisa. So Lisa had mentioned looking at choice boards. And so I'm going to start there today. I'm going to slide just over a little bit because our team looked through the idea of summer learning choice boards and really designed out 4 different kind of grade levels. Of course, we always want to think about those modifications that are needed for your particular students or individualized for your individualized students. So one thing that we have here in the Padlet is just an overview of our summer learning plans. I think it's important to remember that these don't need to be mandatory. They can be fun and engaging resources for our learners, ways for families to stay engaged. So we modified this. If you follow Shelley Moore and some of her inclusive practice strategies, this was a template she had used more specifically for monitoring IEP goals for distance learning. And we've repurposed it and we put some suggestions up here of how you might use it. But we also want it to be a fun and flexible way that students and families can stay engaged with their learning without it being very demanding. So it's fun, it's light, but also allows for some time to continue to learn. So what you're going to see here are some home-based activities, some literacy activities, numeracy activities, and then movement and art. Each one of them having some ideas, an overview of what the activity is, and then a resource if appropriate to model, guide, or give families or yourself a template to work off of. So if this is the pre-K through grade 2 summer learning plan, and what you'll see is just activities that are age appropriate. They may need modifications. They may specifically, most importantly, need you to add in some pictures individualized for that student according to either their visual needs or their AAC device. But it just gives you some ideas of what to share with families as they engage into some summer learning. So this is the pre-K to 2nd grade. There's also a 3 through 5, and then I'll open 6 through 8. Heidi, if you want to share a little bit, it follows the same format. So
yeah, it follows the same format. And the one thing that I was aware of when I was creating the 6 through 8 and the 9 through 12, like Meredith said, first of all, we definitely do have to have taken some consideration. Some students will need this modified. Some may need visuals. Some may need some checklist how to create it. But I really wanted to give a variety of activities for students to do independently, because we know at this age we're really trying to increase independence. So there's some activities that they could do independently, as well as some they could do as a family to stay connected, or maybe with a friend or a neighbor or a grandparent, so that they have some socialization in for the summer as well. as well as balancing it with some academic skills so that they can carry over. But like Meredith said, we really wanted to include things that were fun and then had some guidance with them. So, maybe, for, the activities for cooking or doing something baking, we included things that were like age appropriate. At the middle school level, they like pizza. So we put into how to make a homemade pizza and the recipes that I've included in those are like step-by-step recipes that include checklists. So students may be able to increase their independence in working in the kitchen, putting those activities together. And the high school one, it's really lending to, this is the middle school one, but if you want to pull up the high school one, Meredith, it's really lending to work-based learning activities, really thinking about those work-based readiness, soft skills that we're trying to teach our students so they can prepare for either a volunteer position in the community or maybe a paying position. But it's really thinking about, gaining that independence and being able to kind of problem solve through some things so they can kind of make a schedule for themselves for the summer of planning how to do some things without being told exactly what to do. So there's all those opportunities, maybe creating a budget for a meal or a family budget for food for the week.
Absolutely. So there's pre-K all the way through, just like Heidi mentioned, 9 through 12, so all the way through high school for you. And those are just examples. Obviously, we want you to think through how you can make those your own or utilize them for another activity. This is the template that we had utilized that I just mentioned. And again, this template kind of follows more of an IEP base if you were to be providing a choice board on some goals. But feel free to repurpose those and utilize those however you see is best for your students, adding those visuals. Like Heidi mentioned, we did our best to keep audio and age appropriate, the voiceover, all of those pieces as part of what the resources that we pulled. So age appropriate for those students who are 6 through 8, 9 through 12, and as many modifications or accommodations that we needed to provide through the resources, of course, adding in your own as well. All right, I also wanted to mention, these are the transition boards. If you joined us last week, which I know several of you did, these are those post-secondary life skills and transition choice boards. I wanted to add those. There's some real appropriateness to maybe repurposing those for some summer activities or some engagements to give parents some ideas or families ideas around some activities to stay engaged and continue to develop those age-appropriate skills.
And if you go onto the INTAC site, they are going to be adding some more summer choice boards as well. I think we've had those on one of the Padlets. No, it's still there, but they are going to be adding, I think, some more for summer, they said.
Perfect. So this is an example that we shared a couple of weeks ago of a choice board, but the link should be the same, so you'll be able to access what they update for the summer. I'm just going to reference back. If you're looking for some really good resources, many of our model site teachers, Carol Westerman and Anna Findley, who are both on this call today, created some tutorials for us, for you really, on how to utilize either digital choice boards or some resources that are really helpful, like Edpuzzle or Tar Heel Reader. I know many of you may be familiar with that. So please check these out if that could be something that you add or share, either for summer or the next few weeks, or even as you're thinking about returning in the fall. So I just wanted to show those to you. All right, Ashley, do you want to share the curriculum list? I'll pull it up and talk to that. Many of you are probably familiar with it, but we'll just chat about it for a second. All right, I may not have actually, but I can talk to it. This is the shared curriculum and resource list. What it does is it breaks down each subject level as well as some ideas. So what we've added new is if we have a tutorial or something, a tutorial or a link or a way that a teacher, model site teacher has used this during distance learning, we've added it over here. So those tutorials that I mentioned earlier, there are several others, and we've added them over here if it's appropriate. So you'll have the links as you're thinking about fall, you'll have the links to the resources, you'll have an overview, and if it's utilized, for distance learning, then you'll have a tutorial link there. So when you open it in the live version, you'll have all of those things. So just another way to think about how another educator has used it. So that's available there. There was a question in the chat box. Are the Padlets going to be available over the summer? Absolutely. We are going to leave all of these active. They're actually posted, as Heidi mentioned, on our website. So on the front page, there's a drop-down menu, and it has each of the dates. And the Padlets will stay there throughout the summer so that you can continue to reference those. So you'll see those on the front page of the website. Just use the drop-down menu. Thank you for asking. All right, and so let's just spend the last few minutes here. I know we're getting close on time, just giving you some resources for fall. As you're thinking about how do we collect data and where and how do we prepare for next steps. So what I will do is I am going to go ahead and open up the Preparing for Fall 2020. We talked about a couple of things, and Ashley, are you on, or would you like me to talk to this?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, I think I was double muted somehow before, so I was just sharing away, and then you decided I wasn't there. So
it's all yours. Go for it.
Okay. So yes. So this template is set up to consider once we figure out if schools are going to be open, if distance learning, the way we've been having it is going to continue, or if it's going to be some kind of hybrid, maybe they're in person every other day and distance learning in between, or something like that. And then we just kind of went down the side there. How will you plan all these different areas? So how will you plan for a parent or family communication sort of system if schools are open, if they're not, if it's somewhere in between? Data collection, we talked about earlier. This is going to be an important piece, I think, knowing that it is going to look really different, to collect data if schools are open versus if you're continuing distance learning. So things like that, this will just allow you to think through all the different scenarios. Collaboration with colleagues, how you can stay on the same page with them. Developing a sequence of instruction, I think that one is going to be really big. Many teachers already have, some kind of curriculum map or scope and sequence to work through when schools are open, but throwing that wrench of distance learning in there has really kind of gotten things off track. So how can you, if you do have a scope and sequence, modify it to fit distance learning, or is now the time where you need to start, kind of hammering one out to move forward in the fall? So just taking a look at what that might be like. And then moving on down the line there, student schedules, how can you arrange things for students in each of those scenarios. Universally designed lesson plans is going to be huge, just making sure to keep in mind those elements of UDL so that everything is accessible as possible, no matter where it's happening or how it's happening. Instructional resources and the formative assessment, I think, is an interesting one too to think about. People are just starting to get a handle on formative assessment when schools are open, in the classroom, but to think about how are you going to formatively assess in a distance learning situation is kind of interesting. So hopefully that template then at least gives you a starting point or a structure to kind of think through. And then what Meredith is showing now, what now? So when we're thinking about fall, knowing that there are still so many things that are up in the air, there's a bunch of resources here. They're aligned to those same categories that were on the template we just looked at. Different resources, ideas, guidance documents that we have mostly, for the most part, shared before, but now they're all sort of collected here in these different categories so that you can find them accordingly. I'm trying to think if there are any good ones to point out specifically.
Here, I'm gonna just, while we're talking here, I'm gonna open it in a new window. It's just a little bit easier to see for you. Sure. There's a couple of things, and Ashley can, if there's other things, point them out. So that template that we showed before that had the 3 categories, hybrid all the way to what if distance learning continues, is linked here. So the idea is that these 2 documents sit in partnership. So as you're thinking about the structure of what school may look like in the fall, the great unknown right now, you have this document to kind of guide you through thinking about what strategies or resources you may need to pull. So Ashley created this document here, Considerations for Supporting Families in the Fall. It walks you through really how could you communicate, creating that communication plan, and really surveying your families and asking them those good questions of information that you might need. I'm going to come back to this one, the data collection, but as you're collaborating with colleagues, this came up earlier, this is a student support matrix, so sorry about that. It breaks down really the entire process for students. So it talks about what would presentation look like for that student. Do we need to have digital? Do we need to have visuals for that student? All the way to what's a communication plan for the student, and making sure that they have their communication needs met and they have a form of communication to behavior. So this is a document that you create in partnership with those individuals working with the student. So your SLP, your OT, your PT, your gen ed teacher, all together thinking through what the student needs and what that might look like in that, whatever the educational domain may be in the fall, whether it's distance learning or if school's open. So I encourage you to look through this. We tried to provide as much information as we possibly could on the tool and how it may help you. If it's more specifically towards continuous learning, distance learning, e-learning, we added, we put it in bold so that you could find that as well. So everything from lesson plans, this has embedded distance learning considerations. So if you've seen our lesson plans before, we walk through and have live links inside of the template for the standards, for resources, for ideas for instruction. And then we've gone through and added in an element for distance learning so that you can be thinking about either A, if your lesson starts out and you're delivering it in person and you need to make considerations if school changes format, you have all of that in one document. I also encourage you to look at Patton's UDL Lesson Plan Creator. It's a great resource. So, and then instructional strategies, there's lots of good information. So I do, we do, you do, and then Anna was kind enough to provide an example of what that might look like digitally during distance learning. So all of this information is right here for you. I want to be mindful of our time today and knowing that we have a couple more things. So I'm just going to show you underneath the data collection. We've mentioned this several times. It's opening down below, so I'm going to pull it up for us. This is a template to start to think about fall and what data you may need. So if it takes a minute, I'll go back here and I'll open it this way. So it is linked right here below. I got it. It is linked right below the other two documents. And what this does is it takes you through how you might prepare for fall. So what data do you have prior to COVID-19 closures? Some guiding questions that go with that, some examples of the student data you collected. How will you use that data to guide instruction? And then, you know, what data did you gather in between the distance learning time, that March to May, June for some of you, and then that fall, most specifically, if distance learning continues, what's your approach? If your school is open, here are some considerations there, or hybrid. So how would you, knowing your school structure, how would you plan to collect that data? This is just a guidance document to get you started, and it's embedded in all of the other information that you have. So
just, you know,
go for it.
One of the things we can think about, as we talked about, I know it's kind of a, like you said, I think it was Anna that said, oh, wow, if we have any new students. That document can be very valuable if you do have a new student. Maybe you can get contact with that previous teacher and you can ask her some of those questions. What did you do with them during distance learning? What data did you collect? And maybe they could share that with you. That would be an important tool to be able to utilize when you're thinking about getting to know new students.
Absolutely, excellent point. So each of these templates will be up on the website, and they'll be in, they will stay here as well. So just kind of thinking through the structure of your school in fall, thinking through some resources that you might need, and then thinking through, most importantly, those 3 areas of data collection that you need to consider. Just a way to start to guide and think about it. And if you're not needing that right this moment, they will stay here and we'll upload them onto our website as well. But I think it's important to make sure that we're thinking and looking at those resources that are available, and don't hesitate to reach out to our team and thinking about how you might structure things for the fall, thinking about resources you may need or supports in creating lessons or scope and sequence as well. That's what we're here for. So we have just a couple more minutes. I want to do one more thing, and then we'll do the reflection, and then we'll sign off today. We'll stay on again, so if you have questions. But I wanted to remind everyone that we are coming upon our summer regional training. So today's our last open office hours, but you're going to see our summer regional trainings, which are absolutely free to you and your team. And I'm going to let Heidi or Ashley kind of walk you through that. And why they do that, I'm going to add the reflection to the template.
Are you on, Ash? Okay. I'll go ahead and do that, Meredith. I think Ashley's having
Sure. Thank you.
audio issues again. So this June, we are going to be doing a 3-part series. Instead of meeting, we were going to plan to meet for a whole day, but now that we've turned it into virtual, we are going to meet 3 times on the 16th, the 23rd, and 30th. We would love for you to get a group of colleagues together. It's really a team approach to be thinking about inclusive practices in your school. And so we are going to have some activities for pre-activities before the actual webinars, and then some group work with your team to do in between each webinar, all focusing in on inclusive practice and how to think about that framework for your school, and how to, if it's happening in your school, great, and how do you enhance that? If it's not happening, how do you get it started? How do you find those champion teachers, and how do you find people that know that this is a need for change, and how will that happen in your building? So we really would be excited if you could have a team that would get together and register for that training, the trainings that are coming up in June.
Perfect, thank you. And again, these are at no cost to you. So gather your team, gather together, and then we will be able to provide that professional development. And they're just an hour and a half each. So it's a manageable amount of time to spend collaborating. Thank you, Heidi, for sharing that. Last but not least, before you sign off, I know we're 1 minute over, I added into the chat box today's reflection. We do spend time reading each one of these as we do our evaluations. So if you would please just take a moment to click on that link, or it is on the Padlet as well, and go ahead and fill that out for us. We thank you for your time today. I know it's busy, probably more busy than ever. So thank you for your time. Please reach out to us if you have questions or concerns, and we'd be happy to be thought partners in that or provide some professional development. And if not, please fill this out and we will talk to you soon. Hopefully we'll see you this summer. I'll hang out on the line and in the chat box for about 5 more minutes.